Minutes hadn't started.
No, we won't start your 3 minutes till we sit down. There you go. Now you're ready.
Yeah. My name is William Snodgrass, or Bill Snodgrass, and I live at 7445 Horse Chestnut Street in the Harvest Village neighborhood. We moved in there 2019. And my reason for being here today is just to voice my concern about the issue of vehicles riding on the grass, specifically the town of Wellington's retention ponds that are behind Horse Chestnut Street and along the Box Elder Creek Trail. Although I know that the issue of, so this issue, as I'm sure you all are well aware, and Patti Garcia was very nice about sending me a nice little email back about how the town is already looking into this issue. But as I'm sure you all are well aware, there are a number of, with the advent of lithium batteries and all that, we have a lot of electric bikes and e-scooters, little dune buggies. We've actually had some gas-powered dirt bikes, as well as a golf cart, and that have been riding around, not just in our green spaces, but obviously all around the town. And I think this is not just a town problem, but it's also a statewide problem and probably a nationwide problem. So with what you're seeing here, just to give you a little bit of, and sorry, I didn't put together a better presentation, but what you're seeing here is just an example of the top is horse chestnut, the retention pond that's directly behind my house. I believe this was 2018, so obviously it was kind of brand new. But then over time, specifically in the last, I would say, just 6 months, there's been a lot of these different kinds of vehicles that are riding on the grass. And it wouldn't necessarily be a problem if there are one or two, obviously, if just people, the kids are having fun. And I'm not here to, try to stop the kids from having fun in that regard. But what I wanted to do is just point out that the damage that is being done is obviously going to really kind of something that all of us are going to have to take care of with taxpayer dollars. I have been in contact with Billy Cooksey from the parks, and he's been working with me. I understand that you all are also working with the Larimer County Sheriff Office. And I just don't want to be, I don't want our neighborhood just to be calling the Larimer County Sheriff's Office for this. In fact, I think without an ordinance, they wouldn't necessarily be able to do anything. And even with signage and an ordinance, this may not, stop all of it. But eventually, what would be nice is to have some outreach to the schools, and perhaps the town itself could have something as a new newsletter or whatever. 3 minutes. Any questions?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Any other public comment? All right, on to presentations. Kelly Houghteling, Deputy Town Administrator, will present this item on home rule survey findings.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Oh, you don't need to put that up. You don't need to put that up. That's okay. Think so. Before you tonight is an update on the home rule survey. So just a quick background before we get started tonight. During the 2026 budget process, the Board of Trustees directed staff to pursue engagement in home rule survey and education efforts. This effort was to determine whether home rule is desired form of governance structure for the town of Wellington. This is also in alignment with our goal to be very transparent and get community feedback. Looking at the survey that you have in your packet, and I have the entire report in there from Magellan Strategies that conducted that. So I'm just going to hit the highlights for you all. That survey was conducted between March 3rd and 9th. The survey was distributed to a random sample of registered voters, and our goal was to get at least 400 responses, and we received 537. So a better response rate, which is really encouraging to see. The key findings from that survey, as you will probably note, that trust in the government is mixed. 43% expressing at least a fair amount of trust in the town. In terms of the home rule effort specifically, modest support for forming the Home Rule Charter Commission, 47% in favor, 31% opposed, and 22% undecided. As you will note in the survey, how it was structured is there was kind of an initial question, additional education, and then a re-ask of now that you know more through this education, how do you feel? And so with that additional information that was provided, support increased slightly to only 48%. So just a 1% increase. Typically, when the survey company does this, they see a much higher gain of, oh, now that I know more, I'm more willing to feel one way or another. Typically, most communities that decide to place something on their ballot, they have a response rate of support of something above 60% or more. And in our case, we're at that 47 to 48% at this time. So given these considerations, staff is seeking feedback tonight from the Board of Trustees, whether to continue our outreach efforts in education for home rule, to pause the advancement of home rule, or to identify alternative priorities for community engagement and to rebuild trust. So I just want to pause. I know that there's a lot in your packet tonight. There might be a lot of questions. I know you all need to deliberate, so I will stand for any questions you may have.
An opportunity to ask questions or any clarifications. Let's go ahead and start with Trustee Cannon.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I did go over this in great detail. This has been a priority of mine here in Wellington for 9 years now. And it's been a priority of this board for the past 2 years as well. I'm kind of mixed on how I feel about this. You know, I like the idea that almost half of our population says that, yeah, they'd be supportive of that. I don't like the fact that a third of our population is not supportive of it. But for me, I think I would hate to see home rule be set aside, be honest with you. I would rather see maybe some rethinking about communication and so forth, because that roughly 21% of undecided voters out there, I think with a good education process could be swayed. Yeah. Yeah, it's just disappointing for me that the results didn't come out strong enough for us to just charge it and say, let's do it. But I wouldn't want to see home rule stopped. You know, I would rather see maybe a regroup, and maybe because we've already got the money budgeted for the education piece, and maybe just we need more education throughout the rest of the year and bring that back next year for a possible vote. So, thank you.
Trustee Barrett.
Hi. So I think perhaps the disconnect that we might be having with a lot of community members is, what is our goal with the home rule specifically? What is our aim and what do we plan to do with it? Because what they're seeing is a rearrangement of power being distributed and put into hands into a whole new board that they wouldn't vote for. So what is our objective with obtaining home rule, and what do we want to see come through with the charter, you know? So I can see the uncertainty can show in distrust. So if we were to pursue this, I think that we would want to be more have a more precise direction with where we want to go with it, and then see if that is what the people want.
Trustee Moyer, let the record show that Trustee Moyer is now online.
Hi, I'm on my hotspot, so if I drop out, it's not because I don't like you guys. I am not surprised at these findings. I also have not been 100% convinced myself that this was the direction that we needed to go over the last 2 years. I understand that it's a passion for Trustee Cannon, and I'm open to things always to learn more and explore them, which I feel like is what we've been doing for the last couple of years. This was a big step in deciding whether or not to move forward and seeing how the community feels and how much they even understand about this topic, which clearly is not a lot, and not the support that we would want to move forward with pursuing a ballot measure with, the assumption that it would pass, which is clearly what we want if we're going to spend that time and money. So what I think is that I would love to see a work session where we can dig into this more, especially with the new board, and kind of catch anyone up that has questions. And then also just for all of us to be able to look at, do we want to have this continue to be a priority? Do we want to reallocate the funds that we had set aside in this budget year? And then, clearly it's a process. So any funds that may have gone to it in the following budget year, like just kind of reconsider what those priorities are. And if there's something else that we decide is more of a priority in our strategic planning or our retreat, as we come together as a board and reevaluate our plan, I think we should consider reallocating those funds. I'm not against courting the community with more education. I think if we were to decide that we did want to move forward, we would definitely want to pursue many more education opportunities to see this through in a successful and effective way.
Thank you. Trustee Moore.
So I think that what the numbers show is that there's people who still have questions in regards to what exactly something like home rule would look like for specifically our town. So I suppose I'd like to see more further education and further kind of fact finding about what that would look like. Like some of you guys have said, I'm not quite exactly sure yet how that would fit in Wellington. I don't want to, set it aside. But I think that it's worth giving it a little bit more resources and learning more and more about it to see exactly how it would look like for Wellington.
Thank you. Trustee Blackstone.
Thank you for the presentation. I had a couple questions, if you don't mind. As far as the folks that got the survey, was that randomly chosen from the town, or was it just kind of how was that chosen? I'm just curious.
Yes, it was a random sample of registered Wellington voters.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And then as far as the education that went into this, my understanding is that we would need to have like more of a staff restructuring in order to take on the weight of something like home rule. Is that something that was part of that education, and is that something that Ms. Garcia has kind of given any thought into? I know we even currently have a couple openings, and I can see that the difficulty in getting more staff if we need to, if we were going to look further into this. I'm just curious if that was part of the education process and those kind of increased costs specifically to staff.
So are you asking about to just do the continuing education of home rule, or if home rule is approved by voters?
Yes. Yeah. If home rule, my understanding is that if we were to go to a home rule town, that there would be more costs brought on to the town, especially more pressure put onto staff. And I feel like our staff is kind of already at, a maximum. And again, with 2 vacancies, I can see how it's just difficult to get more staff that are worthwhile, I guess is a good way to put it.
Sure. Well, that one can't be answered with certainty in terms of will we need to hire more FTEs employees right away? Not necessarily. It just depends on what we want to do. For example, the town of Severance, once they became home rule, their charter was passed. There's the self-collection of sales tax, but they chose to keep that with the state of Colorado. And so So there's just different ways, but there's a lot. That's just one detail. But in terms of that would be a much further step of exploring and education with the public if that is a gap that you have identified of maybe people just didn't know, what that would look like.
Yeah, that's one of my main concerns is that, I mean, I think it's alluring, the idea of having, certain ways of increased income for the town, and I'm all for that. But my concern is also for additional costs onto the town, and then how do those get weighed? And I think that would be an important part of the education for folks that are for it. Really, one of my main concerns with this presentation was that kind of lack of trust or where the trust is with the town, with the town right now. And that gives me just a little bit of pause. I'm cautious for the town to want to like knee-jerk reaction and say, well, I'm unhappy with the way things are, and so we're just going to go this other direction. That's something that I'm just kind of on guard about. I think us, especially now that we have a new board, building that trust and showing the folks of Wellington that, they can have that with us. That's something that's important to me. And again, I think it really showed it on that presentation. I agree with Trustee Moyer. I would like to see this more in a work session to kind of figure out some of those other details and see what we can do to increase the town's trust in the current government, and see if that has anything to, sway folks' minds. Maybe with more trust, more folks will go towards home rule. I think that's entirely possible as well. But I would also stand behind a work session talking about this.
Great. Thank you so much. A lot of great feedback. My personal opinion lands where the results are obvious in that as they stand, this is not a measure we should move forward with. We don't have the approval really to be successful and to use money appropriately to go to an election with this item, but the assumption is, based on the results we're seeing, that it would fail. So therefore, why would we use money to put towards this effort? And that is where it stands right now. The results I see from the survey is that there is missing trust, right, within our board and the town in general, amongst the folks who live here and work here. And we could use the remaining funds to improve that trust, or in my mind, we've surveyed our community. It's oversaturated. We've been surveying them and surveying them and surveying them between all of our master plans, comprehensive plans, strategic planning. We've been doing it for years, so many surveys. I think we honestly have a good sense of what the community does want. And I think the best way to earn that trust is to acknowledge those things. I think that's how we might earn trust within our community. So what I would suggest, and I guess I'm looking for some kind of consensus for feedback and direction, right, is that we pause completely on the home rule project, knowing that in the future, this is likely where we're going to end up. But as of right now for this project, I believe we should pause with the current standings. And then during our retreat, really discuss our strategic plan and determine where that budgeted money for the purpose of building trust and executing on plans that the community has asked for, maybe redirect those funds towards those purposes. So that would be my suggestion. I was hearing things that are similar, also things that were different. So I wanted to just go around the horn one more time, or if anybody has feedback or rebuttal based off of what's been said. Otherwise, I would love to hear it so we can provide some direction. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, actually, I really like a lot of the comments that we've had so far, and certainly I agree with Trustee Cannon. This was something that obviously the past board for the last 2 years has been working on here, and it is certainly a priority of mine as far as that goes. I fully support the notion of home rule, and I was also kind of maybe a little bit distressed in the survey results, but I would certainly support the board talking about this in our strategic plan. I think part of the issue with this is, as we've got a brand new board right now, this is something that's a pretty big bite to take for everybody, right? I think we all need maybe a little bit of education, just make sure that we're all up to speed and on the same page of these things. But I do think it's important for our community to understand that, 90% of residents live in 90% of Colorado residents live in home rule communities. And I think the idea about it seems to me that maybe there's some misinformation about what it is that home rule is versus what home rule is not, right? So home rule doesn't allow us to ignore state statutory requirements or that sort of thing. The idea of home rule to me is that it really allows us to open doors to things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. One of those things being for bills that are passed by the Colorado General Assembly, being things that we can opt out. Maybe they don't fit the town of Wellington. Many of those things are obviously now the legislature's kind of taken a turn to say that those are matters of statewide concern, so that we can't necessarily opt out of all things. But certainly in the past, the General Assembly has allowed for some of those options. So, like I said, really home rule to me allows us to open the doors to things that we would not otherwise be able to do as a community, right? Maybe create a lodging tax or other ideas about revenue, income, or that sort of thing. So I think it's. I was hesitant about this when we were going to do the survey this year. I kind of was of the notion that we should give this a year for the board to kind of get coalesced and really kind of build that trust in the new board and then take it forward. And certainly it obviously the results of the survey very much show me that there's a lot of public education to do on this item. So I certainly wouldn't support a ballot measure or a creation of a charter commission at this time. I think the board needs to really take a pause on this. And like I said, I would certainly support us talking about that at our strategic planning and see how the board would like to take this forward or not take it forward. But it's certainly worth a discussion.
I'm sorry I missed you. I'm my list of trustees. Thank you. Any other comments? Moyer, yes, please.
Moyer, right?
Yes.
Okay. I do think that, like I said, I've never been 100% convinced, and I'm glad Trustee Blackstone brought up the trust piece, because that was in my notes and I skipped over it. Like, that to me is the most important thing. And if we're lacking that, which we know we've been for a long time, we do need to focus on rebuilding that, just like Trustee Mason said. And without that, we can't do anything that we want to with the public's confidence. And we're not going to make all of the people happy all of the time, but we can do our best to make the most of them comfortable. And so I'm in favor, if the majority feels that way, of tabling this, rebuilding trust, looking at our priorities, coming back to it eventually down the line if the path seems appropriate. But I'm fine to not move forward with pursuing this at this time. And the other thing I was going to say was, I encourage the new board members, because this wasn't like the most hot topic, however important it is, to revisit our past work sessions and meetings on the topic, because there's a lot of information there. And we did have the opportunity to speak with other municipalities that, had been through the process and how that went for them. And there's some really valuable insight there and information. So take a look at those meetings, and happy to just educate ourselves more and then move on to something else until the time feels better or right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's comments on this. I had a conversation with the mayor yesterday, in fact, and the topic of trust came up, and I'm a firm believer that government works when people aren't aware that we're working. It's just when we start intruding on people's lives that they start arguing or not trusting your government. And unfortunately, we've been intruding on people's lives with our water for once a month for years, and taste and odor before that, going back to the early 1900s. So there's always this level of trust. And I would like to see us build that trust. And unfortunately, the best way to build trust, or fortunately, is just to do the right thing, do the right things all the time, and communicate effectively, be transparent. You know, we can't fix our water, for example, but if we're at least honest about what we're doing, what our plan is. We had 3 years of executive sessions on the water, and people are unaware of all the work that the town has been doing on this. So keeping that information flowing would be wonderful. I think that's a good point for trust. But I like the idea of using the strategic planning session or retreat to talk specifically about trust. And I'm okay with tabling home rule for now, or putting a pause on it. I don't want to kill it. I don't want to divert the money to something else. I would rather just kind of keep that in reserves until after we have a chance to get ourselves more educated on it as well. And then maybe have a discussion in the either the retreat or a work session about maybe what our next steps are on that. But no, with the results the way they are right now, I wouldn't say take it to a vote. You know, a part of me said, well, let's use 47%. All we need is win by one vote. You know, I don't want to take that chance because I'd hate to lose the trust by pushing an agenda that people are unaware of. So that would be my recommendation. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Trustee Cannon and Trustee Mason. I would like to table this for now with a goal of developing what that plan looks like ourselves, and really getting the risks and the benefits that we can figure out also to the folks in the town, so that kind of we have more background, the folks have more input. But I would like to see us continue to work on this as a plan for the town, or as a, you know, gotta use my words right, because this plan for the town means something. But I would like to continue working towards this. I do think that there's a lot of benefit. I just would also like people to be aware of the risks and costs. But so I like the idea, but I would also like to table it for now. I think putting it to a vote right now would be the wrong idea.
I hear a common theme of a pause is the clear direction. If I can get a thumbs up for a yes and a thumbs sideways for I can live with that, I would appreciate it. Does anybody?
I have a
Pause.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we saying pause and just kind of hold those funds in limbo, or are we saying pause, reallocate funds to other priorities, including building trust, and revisit next year or down the line?
What I have been hearing is a pause, and then during strategic planning, we will determine, you know, priorities.
Okay.
That's what I'm hearing. If that's correct, then we have some clear direction to give to staff. Is that good?
Side thumb.
Side thumb. Okay. That's one side thumb count. All right. All right. That's the plan. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for the presentation. On to action items. Well, Ms. Garcia, please read the title of D1.
Resolution number 13-2026, a resolution approving the town administrator's plan of administrative organization.
Patti Garcia, Town Administrator, will present on this item.
And I'm going to sit here tonight since I'm
Great.
doing multiple duties. So as you could see in the packet, the municipal code requires the town administrator to submit a proposed plan of administrative organization within 90 days of appointment. I was appointed at the last meeting, so meeting that 90-day deadline with all kinds of flags going on, because this is the first time we've done it this quickly. So in your packet is the organizational chart. You'll see that there are the vacancies that we talked about in the past. Those are still included and will be brought. We will be talking to you later in June. I had talked about trying to bring that in early June, but in talking with the Director of Finance, we're going to push that off a little bit so we can have good solid numbers, revenue numbers for you to review when we talk about those position requests. So if you have, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but it's pretty straightforward.
Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public? William, by chance? No? Okay.
This one specific.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 13-2026, a resolution approving the town administrator's plan of administrative organization.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Yes.
Mayor Dailey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Will Ms. Garcia please read the title of D2?
Resolution number 14-2026, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Wellington establishing liaisons to the Town of Wellington's boards, commissions, and councils.
Thank you, and I will be presenting on this item. In the packet, you will see within the resolution the liaison appointees for the many groups that we participate in. So Behavioral Health Policy Council, Colorado Municipal League, Finance Advisory Board, Larimer County Opioid Abatement Council, Main Street Board, North Front Range MPO, North Front Range Regional Solid Waste Policy Council, Parks, Rec, Open Space and Trails, also known as PROS, Upper Front Range Transportation Planning Region, and the Wellington Housing Authority. I have assigned folks based on conversations and interests that I've deemed that might be appropriate. If anybody has any concerns or questions, I'd love to hear that. You'll also know I added seconds on several of them that I previously have been liaison on, which I don't want to give up because I love those boards so much, but I do know that I will be busier. And I think that those boards deserve a designated second and someone to learn more about them in general. So based on that, are there any questions for me or any questions in general? Yes, sir.
Just a couple of comments. When we spoke yesterday, I talked about coming off of the Finance Advisory Board, and you were thinking about maybe appointing somebody different.
Yes, you're right. I intended to put on Trustee Barrett. I must have made a mistake there. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, this packet was prepared before we had that conversation yesterday morning.
Right. Would that be an acceptable change?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for catching that.
Well, good. I have a question, and I don't mean any offense by this, but Trustee Blackstone, I know you serve on the Wellington Housing Authority Board. How would that work if you're a liaison, you're serving on that board, you're serving on this board? I see some conflicts there that maybe I'm just unclear of.
So my understanding is that the board member for the Board of Trustees for Wellington always has a board member on the Wellington Housing Authority, and in that liaison position, but it is a full voting rights board member. Mayor Dailey has been serving in that role the last few months.
Correct.
And so I would basically take over that role as the liaison, but again, it is a full voting and has been the history of the Wellington Housing Authority. And then we would vote in my replacement, basically.
Okay, thank you. I just want to clear that.
This assignment would also deem my resignation from that board as that voting member as well. So that is part of it. And then they will be seeking, so that anybody knows, a resident or another community member to serve on that board in Trustee Blackstone's space. So any other questions? Any comments from the public? Oh, Trustee Moyer, do you have any?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I see your hand up now. Sorry about that.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to be good about that. I just seeing that there are like your seconds or your, listed there for you. I'm wondering, because I know you and I had that conversation and talked about the housing authority and, my continued wish to support that. If I should, just for the record, maybe be listed as a second for that behind Blackstone, or if that's not necessary and just we know that I want to be involved in certain things.
I need to check, but I think we are limited by the actual agreement that we can't have more than one person on there from our board, but they are open to the community meetings. So that might be a good opportunity to get embedded in there. But I can check on that. And if that is the case, if we can have a second for that, I think we should consider maybe amending that in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Because they actually serve on the nonprofit board as well. So that's the reason why.
Right. Maybe
Right.
just an understudy.
Perfect. All right. No comments from the public. May I hear a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 14-2026 with the following amendments to replace that Trustee Barrett will replace Trustee Cannon on the Finance Advisory Board.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Dailey.
Yes.
Mayor, that vote passes.
Thank you. We are now on to reports. Our town attorney. Sir, do you have any updates for us?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I raised an issue about the board's preferences on communication with the town attorney at our last meeting. And I do think that it is important for me to have a sense of how you would like us to approach our particularly attorney-client confidential communications. As you know, the attorney-client relationship is a special one under statute and case law. Those communications are generally protected, but they can be disclosed by each of you as the client. It is the client's privilege, not the attorney's, but it can be waived by a municipal officer. However, the municipal officer is subject to your fiduciary duty to the town. So if you were to disclose a confidential communication and it were to have adverse consequences for the town, you would continue to bear a responsibility. Can we have the next slide, please? So the types of communication that I generally use are either in-person executive sessions. Those are not recorded conversations. Therefore, they are a pretty radical departure from the ordinary objective of local government, which is to provide a lot of transparency to your constituents. And you take up meeting time because an executive session needs ordinarily to be tacked on either to the beginning or end of your meetings. And people will be excluded from the room during those executive sessions. Everyone who is not a town board member, town administrator, or particular members of staff who have factual information that they need to communicate with you. So the executive session in person is something that we do, but do advisedly. So I want you to think about that in terms of your direction to me on your preferences in our attorney-client communication. The second way that I try to get information to you is in writing, generally in memoranda that will be captioned with confidential attorney-client communication. Please do not disclose, and when we send you those memoranda, they are generally pretty well fleshed out analyses of the facts, the rule of law, and the application of the rule of law to the facts, so you have a sense of what your decisions are likely to be. We sometimes use email, but we can't communicate with all of you at the same time via email because that puts us in the situation where we may inadvertently have created a meeting in violation of the open meetings law. So we never provide legal advice to you via text message, mostly because it isn't secure or may not be secure. And we ask that client communications to the lawyer on the subject of representation not be communicated via text message either. If you want to get a hold of me in particular, a phone conversation or an email are always the two best ways to do that. And obviously, if we engage in a back and forth, a discussion, one member of the board with me, please ask in person or via follow-up email using the same method in which the colloquy started, so that we have a good thread that another board member could follow if they wanted to learn what your communication with the attorney was. And please include your title as trustee, mayor, mayor pro tem. And remember not to copy other trustees on an email for the reasons that we've already discussed. So I'm really interested in hearing from the board as to what your preferences are, how you would like to receive communications from me, and any questions that you have on how we do that going forward.
I'll start with my personal preferences and we'll go around. I do prefer doing executive sessions because I learn through conversation better than reading. That's just my learning method. When there is written communications, I need a very clear executive summary that summarizes it, and then details and supporting facts following that. But it does need to be a very concise executive summary.
Okay.
That's my preferences. Does that acknowledge your questions here, or should I do others before I walk around the room?
Those are both very helpful observations for me. Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be my feedback. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I would agree that generally speaking, especially on any items that are coming before the whole board, executive session is most appropriate for those types of things. Certainly, we've done a lot of that in the past when considering our North Poudre irrigation contract and these types of things. It's obviously very appropriate that all of the board, I think, gets all the same information. So exec session for that, certainly. I know me personally, in the past, I have made some brief phone calls to the attorney in the past when I've had just very specific questions about any specific topic. So as long as you would be amenable to that, I would not have an issue with that necessarily being disseminated out to the rest of the board. If that's your preference, I presume that everybody kind of wants to be on the same page about just that mostly everything. So I would be fine with that. The only situation I can think of where that could be an issue is if we are having a discussion about board member behavior or these types of things. So I would prefer that those types of things might be confined to just yourself and whoever the other party may be, whether that's me and you, or Ms. Dailey and you, or anybody on the board and you, as far as those types of individual questions. I don't anticipate that happening, but it's always something to think about, of course. I think that's pretty much all the comments I have. So,
thank you.
Trustee Moyer.
Yes, I agree. Executive sessions are highly valuable for me, and of course would want the entire board to be aware of any information that's shared about topics that would warrant those. For the second bullet there, I feel like in the past I've had questions that I could share and receive answers back via email. And then sometimes, depending on the subject matter, I also am an audible and visual person. So having a conversation, if the topic is one that is, I guess, important enough, or yeah, I guess that's a good word, to have a conversation either over the phone or in person. I've done that before, really over the phone, not ever in person, but just to kind of get the clarification I need in real time, and be able to answer any questions that arise kind of during that receiving of information, just to kind of, yeah, get the clarity all at once and be able to talk it through. So that's kind of how I see it happening for me, if that's okay. Is that everything? I think so.
Thank you. Trustee Moore.
I think I mirror kind of your learning style. In-person executive sessions are great. I'm not opposed to email communication either, or a concise kind of, what did you call it? Snippet.
Executive summary.
Executive summary. Also works by me. That's all.
Trustee Blackstone.
Very similar responses. The preference would be in-person executive sessions. I think if time allows, that's the best case. But I could see a situation where the day before an executive session, somebody has a question going out that might help to get that clarification, that day before, that way we're better prepared for that session. So I think both is the ultimate answer, but with a preference towards trying to get as much information during those executive sessions, I think is best for me as well.
Trustee Kinnon.
Both.
Trustee.
Yeah.
Trustee Barrett.
I also kind of prefer both. I do think a lot is accomplished in the executive sessions, but if you need a refresher, reminder, it's good to have a nice summary. So I would love to have both if possible. And I do like the guidelines that Mayor Rebekka laid out as far as what that would consist of.
Great. Is there any more clarification you need with that? I know it is going to be on a topic by topic basis for sure. Some of the items, but does that seem very clear, or what other questions or preferences would you like us to
I am
declare?
beyond optimistic that if there are problems with our communication style, you will let the town administrator know and you will let me know. So let's move forward. I've got a sense of where I think everyone's coming from. And if I miss the mark, please let me know.
Okay, great. And if you want me to answer a phone call, you should text me first to say I'm going to call you.
Absolutely.
That is just the honest truth of how it works.
No, that's good.
Give me like a couple minutes in between there. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Town Administrator Garcia, any reports?
Thank you. So what I heard tonight is from Trustee Moyer is maybe a request to get the home rule presentations that have been done in the past and packet materials out to the entire board, just as a refresher, and we'll get that done before strategic planning. I did send an email out a little bit earlier this evening that I'll be out of the office starting tomorrow, returning on Tuesday, May 5th. So if potentially that will be done after I return or something like that, but we'll make sure to get that to you before strategic planning on May 14th and 15th.
Thank you.
Also, we can also reach out to Julie Bruin at Housing Catalyst to find out about the Housing Authority. If we can have one liaison and then an alternate, we'll check. I can have staff check in on that and get an answer to you all so you know how to proceed on that. And we will
Appreciate it.
update that resolution and get it to you for signature at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff communications are in the packet. Are there any questions on the reports that were provided?
I had a question. I believe it was for the county sheriff's office. I believe if I read it right, that there seems to be some sort of uptick in the last little bit in some pulling folks over and possibly some trouble with the school. And I was just wondering if that was something that's out of the norm, or maybe it's a time of year sort of thing, or if it's not a thing at all.
Lieutenant Van Hook, would you be
Yeah.
available to respond? Thank you.
Well, so
Understood.
I think I got the gist of what you're asking. No, I'm not. We're not seeing anything of concerns. It's just kind of the uptick isn't unusual. We're obviously watching it, but it's just kind of over. You'll see. I think you'll see over time a little bit of a trend going back and forth, but nothing of concern at this time.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm just getting used to the numbers as well. So appreciate it.
Thanks.
So actually, one last thing, if I
Yes,
if I
sir.
can, because we did talk about the e-bikes, and we had public comment. Is that something that you guys are? I mean, I know we've talked about it just as a concern. That's something that you guys are, kind of we're trying to hammer out, and anything.
That is something that we're working on, and there will be presented to the board on some propositions for some different ordinances. So it is something that we're actively working with the town on that will be presented to you guys soon.
Great, appreciate that.
Yes, the goal is to have that codified before school gets out. So we do have a goal. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Any board reports? We'll start at this end. Trustee Cannon.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for Trustee Moore, there's a Colorado Municipal League legislative wrap-up on Tuesday, May the 19th. I'll send you information. It's a webinar, so we don't have to drive to Denver or anything. But if you want to attend, it's just kind of a wrap-up of this year's legislative session. And I'll be happy to chat with you about what the Colorado Municipal League Policy Committee is all about. I think it kicks off again a little bit in the fall. They have a mix of meetings that are either in place at the CML building in downtown Denver or video, or sometimes it's a mix of both. But whatever you need to get up to speed will be great. The second thing I'd like to ask Mayor about, as far as the being on the TPR and the I-25 coalition, and it's also listed as the MPO. I know that I've had conversations before with you and also with Administrator Garcia about moving the town from the TPR into the MPO. And I know that this is just a report time, but I would like to get more of a consensus from the entire board that that's the direction that we want to go. So I don't want to just take off unless everybody has an understanding of why it's important, and what we get from the TPR, what would happen from the MPO, and what that procedure would look like as far as making that transition. And that might even be a work session topic as well.
I think absolutely, because we need background information for everybody involved. Historically, that's definitely been the preference and the direction, but I think a game plan and those kind of things are in order. So absolutely, let's talk about it further.
Thank you.
Yeah. Trustee Barrett?
Because I have nothing to report at the moment.
Mayor Pro Tem. Trustee Moyer. I remembered. I keep forgetting. You're online.
No, nothing at this time. Thanks.
Okay. Trustee Moore.
Nothing at this time.
Blackstone.
Nothing at this time.
Great. I did get to attend the Arbor Day celebration from Parks Rec, Open Space and Trails. It was super fun. The weather wasn't great, so I was a little worried, but there was a lot of people who showed up. They played all of the fun games that Parks and Rec department brings out. including the inflatables and the big blue blocks. We watched and participated in tree planting. I did learn that I have not been planting trees correctly, so that's good to know. We also placed our wishes for the next year with these trees, hoping that they'll come true. And a lot of kids participate in some crafts as well that the library hosted. So it was overall a fantastic event. As always, Arbor Day is always weird weather. I don't know why, but it was a wonderful event. So I wanted to thank staff and volunteers for making that, and Bartlett Tree Services for making that a wonderful experience too. So thank you. I don't have any other updates as of now. Having no further business, I do adjourn this meeting at 7:28 p.m. Thank you all for coming.